Does anyone else remember that time in Gilmore Girls where Paris Geller said, "Show me a trend and I'll show you Madeline"? Yeah, that's me. Grab your beverage, grab your blanket, get yourself nice and comfy because we are doing our Fable Wrapped, we are doing our worst books of the year, and we are doing our best books of the year. So let's get into it. Let's start by getting into our 2025 reading wrap from Fable. I'm very excited. I have not done this yet. So I'm just gonna kind of flip through it with you guys. Hopefully we can look at it together. This is so adorable. I love the gold foiling. And this green is so good, actually. This year, you read 54 books, reaching 108% of your goal. You exceeded your goal of 50 books. Yes, yes, yes. That is how math works. This year, you read for 237 days. Okay, that's pretty good. On average, you finished each book in 12 days. Yeah, honestly, that makes sense. My longest streak was 98 days. Which is so heartbreaking because it should have been 100. Romance books lit your journey with 28 books in that genre. My most popular pick was Six of Crows. My rarest read was Send Me Where No One Wants to Go, which makes a lot of sense. Let's close your story with 3 books that made this year special. Oh, your best book of the year. Okay, let's see. Oh, I have to scroll through. Honestly, I think we have to go with The Women. Most criminally underrated. I feel like I read a lot of popular books. Oh, actually, The Fractured Dark. This series in general, like the Devoured Worlds trilogy, is so criminally underrated. So we're gonna go with that one. The most beautiful cover. Ooh, I feel like it has to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I think we're going with that one. Okay, so to wrap it all up. Yes, please wrap it all up. Yay. My top genre was romance. Okay, I feel like Fable and Goodreads and whatever call so many books romance that are like not necessarily romance books. Like if they have a subplot of romance, automatically it gets tagged as a romance book. And I don't like that. I have a gripe with that. I understand like it has a romance plot. So like, sure, I get why you're calling it romance, but like, don't call it romance just because it has a subplot of romance. Like if it's a fantasy, call it a fantasy. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna set my 2026 reading goal and I think I'm gonna set it to 52 books. So we have like a book a week for 2026 and I may exceed that. I don't think I'll read less than that. I usually read more. Like last year I read 80. So I feel like I can definitely hit that 52 and I may go over, which would be great. That was so cute and fun. Moving on from our Fable adventure, I'm going to be starting with the worst books of 2025 and then I will do my favorite books of 2025. I have 5 for each of these categories and I want to preface this by saying that I had a lot of really good reads this year. Like in years past, I've had times where I've had a lot of reads in general, and so automatically there were a lot of reads that were not very good that I did not rate very highly, but my average star rating on Fable this year was 4 stars, which is really, really good for me because I don't typically rate books super highly. So I was very impressed with my reading year, even though I didn't read quite as many books as I normally would. In fact, I read a lot less than I normally would. I feel like I got so much more high quality books read this year, which honestly, that's so much better. Like I would much prefer the higher quality versus more books. So even 2 of my 5 worst books of the year are books that I still would and do recommend. So just wanted to like give that little bit before we get into it. But we're gonna go in order of 5 to 1, 1 being the absolute worst book that I read this year and 5 being like, it's on the list, but it wasn't like horrible. And honestly, 5, I still gave, number 5 in this list, I gave 3 stars. So it wasn't even like that bad of a book. It was just that I read so many good books this year that like I didn't actually have that many for my like worst books of the year, if that makes sense. So starting with number 5, I have The Hating Game by, I think it's Sally something. And honestly, this book wasn't, like I said, it wasn't that bad. I still gave it 3 stars, but I don't remember it at all and have not thought about it at all since I read it. That's like, I think the only book that I read this year that I can pretty confidently say I have no idea what it was about. I do not remember reading it. I don't remember the plot at all. I don't remember the characters at all. Like, it was just not a book that made a big impact on me and not something I ever thought about again. So that's why it kind of made it onto this list. Next, number 4 on this is It Happened One Fight. And like I said before, The Hating Game and It Happened One Fight are still, I think, recommendable. Like, these are books that I rated relatively highly. Like, I think It Happened One Fight was like a 2.75, and a 3 is still like above average as a rating. Like 2.5 is like a very average rating, which It Happened One Fight might have been a 2.5, but it's like, I personally didn't have the best time reading it, but I might still recommend it to someone depending on the situation. And I honestly have recommended It Happened One Fight before, just because of like the vibes of that book. But I remember it being a bit cliche and just the characters not being super likable. And so that was kind of why that one was like not necessarily my favorite. I did not love that one. And then next I have The Ex-Hex. This one's number 3 on this list. I honestly probably wouldn't recommend The Ex-Hex like to anyone, and I think that this one made it onto this list mostly because it was one of the most disappointing. This book is so highly recommended by so many people, and I personally just did not like it, like, at all. I've had to really push my way through this book in order to even finish it. I was very close to DNFing it, but I was like, so many people love this book, I have to figure out why. I really should just finish it and see what happens. And it just did not deliver. I did not really enjoy it that much, and I really wish that I had, but unfortunately I did not. The last 2, number 2 and then the number 1 worst, ironically, are I think the only 2 in this list that I actually own the physical copy. Actually, I think I own It Happened One Fight, but still crazy that I own the number 1 worst and the number 2 worst books that I read this year. Number 2 is The Newcomer by Mary Kay Andrews. Honestly, this book wasn't like that bad. It was just painfully slow. Like, there was so much that could have been so good, but they took so long and we lost the plot so many times. Like, this is kind of like a summer mystery romance type of read, literary fiction, mystery romance, crossover, women's fiction, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of different genre bending going on here, but it wasn't that bad. Like, it really, like, the premise should have been good. We're following our main character who, her sister like dies suddenly, and she has to take her niece and like basically go on the run because she is like wanted for her sister's murder, but she didn't do it and she thinks she knows who did, and her sister left her note saying like, you need to take care of my daughter, basically. So like, all of these things should shape up to be a great book, but as you can tell, it was long. Like, this book was 450 pages. And if a like mystery, lit fic, romance is almost 500 pages, I'm sorry, but it's too long. It is too long. I do remember a lot of it, so I guess they had that going for them, but like, really, the plot, like the pacing was so poorly done. The plot just did not deliver on the premise, unfortunately, and I didn't love it like I really wanted to, and it was another one I was like fighting to get through. Now, I did have elements of this book that I did really enjoy, so I can't like completely bash it. It wasn't like a 1-star read, but I wanted it to be really good based off of the premise, and it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. And so that is why I ended up on this list. The last book on this list, you will know if you've been following along for a little bit. You should not be surprised, but the number 1 worst book I read in 2025 was Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, which part of the reason this is number 1 is because I think my hopes were so high for this and it was just such a disappointment. I'm not gonna go way too much into why. I do review this book in my 24-hour readathon video, and I think I talk about it in another video as well, so I really don't need to like go super in depth with this, but really like to just put it in a nutshell for you, the pacing was poor, the characters were not well developed, the setting was inconsistent and incomplete, and the whole plot of the book was essentially pointless. So I'm not gonna really go much more into this one. Just know I was not a fan. But we're gonna move on to some happier things, and I'm gonna go grab my top 5 books of the year. I actually really need a sip of something. Take a minute, take a sip of your whatever drink that you grabbed for this video. Also, shout out my Snoopy cup. I won this in a gift exchange this Christmas and I'm obsessed. I got a whole like pack. It was like a 4-pack of them and they're all like Peanuts Christmas cups and I am so excited about them. Like I am using them. Obviously it's after Christmas by this point, but I am still using them and I will be using them until New Year's when I put all of my Christmas stuff away. That was a little side tangent, but just know that I'm obsessed with these cups. Moving on, I'm going to be doing similarly these top 5 in order from 5 to 1. So we'll start with number 5 and then we'll end with number 1, which was my number 1 book of the year. Starting with number 5, we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it in January. The fact that I read this in January of 2025 and it made my top 5 list is actually insane to me. But every time I think about this book, a huge smile comes on my face. Like, I love it so, so much. I love this world. I love these characters. It is the sweetest, coziest, most fun little fantasy adventure that it completely launched me into this new obsession with this little subgenre of fantasy that is like cozy and cute and whimsical and magical and it's just so fun. I'm actually currently reading the 2nd book in this series. Thinking about this book just like puts a huge smile on my face because I just love it so, so much. I'm not gonna talk anymore about it because I do have a whole reading vlog with this in it and I like reviewed it and everything in that. If you want to go check that out, I posted that at the beginning of this year. But that's all I'm gonna say is that I adore this book. All of these books are like 6-star rates for me, like 10 out of 10 no notes type of reads for me. So that is number 5. Number 4, I actually do not own yet because I just listened to it on audio very, very recently and I haven't gotten a chance to buy myself a copy or to acquire a copy. But that is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. When I say like the way that I adore Emily Wilde's is the way that I adore Tress of the Emerald Sea. Similar cozy fantasy vibes, so whimsical, so magical, so fun. Tress of the Emerald Sea is like a fantasy adventure similar to The Princess Bride and was actually inspired by The Princess Bride. And I just absolutely love it. I grew up on The Princess Bride. My dad could quote that entire movie start to finish. And I've seen it probably upwards of 30 times in my life. So I know that movie very, very well and absolutely love it. And so then to read Tress and to get some of like the lore that's like similar to The Princess Bride and just all these like, oh, it was so good. And then I read it like very, very recently and I had already read Mistborn Era 1. And so there were like some breadcrumbs of other things in the Cosmere that I was kind of like picking up on a little bit in Tress, which was also just so much fun. So I absolutely adored Tress of the Emerald Sea. Like, have not stopped thinking about it since I finished it. And just so excited about it. I do have a reading blog with that book in it coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. I'll give more thoughts and feelings on that at that point. Okay, number 3, this should come as no surprise to anybody, but it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I read this book earlier this year And I just was so emotionally impacted by this book. I have thought about it so often since reading it. It just does such a good job of portraying a point of view and a perspective that you really like don't have or you don't get from a lot of other historical fiction that surround this period of time. It is World War II, and we have two women who each kind of choose to fight in their own way. They are living in France during the war, and so their country is being overtaken by German soldiers, and they both have just different ways and methods of like coping with the war going on, and they choose kind of like opposite sides of or opposite ways of dealing with things, but both of them have very equally important roles in defending their family and their country. And it's just such a beautiful picture of like how we can choose such different paths, but at the end of the day, we are all trying to get to the same goal. And these two sisters are trying to get to the same goal of protecting themselves, protecting their families, protecting their country. They just kind of go about it differently, but it's also just such an interesting portrayal of how women in history have had to fight in very different ways than men have. Men were sent into combat, and the women were fighting a war of their own, being at home. And so I just think it was just so fascinating. I got through it so quickly because I was just so immersed, and I could go on and on about how much I love Kristen Hanna's writing. She just does such a great job of putting you in the mind of the characters that she writes and just making you feel like you know them so well, like they are your close personal friend. And I just truly felt this way about The Nightingale. I loved it so much. Okay, number 2 on this list is actually an entire series, but I'm just gonna show you the first one, but that is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I truly have entered my Brandon Sanderson era. I fear it is an obsession that I will not be able to shut up about for possibly years to come. I read the entire Mistborn Era 1 trilogy in the span of about 2 or 3 months, which is kind of insane for me for a series. I usually am not like that obsessively going from one book straight to the next, but I kid you not, I really did go like from one book to the next to the next. It was such a good reading experience. I have not read a high fantasy that delivered like this one does in so long. So if you don't know, Mistborn is a young adult fantasy trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. This is era 1. It is split into 2 eras, and there's a huge time gap in between. So you read era 1, and then there's this big time gap, and then you read era 2. And I have not started era 2 yet, but I do have plans to start that in January, and I'm very excited for it. But era 1 follows our main character, Vin, who discovers that she has these powers that not everybody has to basically do all kinds of different things. And I'm not gonna like share much else other than that. The whole trilogy is the battle between good and evil. Way back when, at some point before we meet Vin, Evil is ruling their universe, and Vin and her whole little band of companions have to go and fight this evil. They decide, we don't want to live this like this anymore. We're going to change things. We are going to overthrow this evil, and we are going to make a better world for ourselves. And we're just following Vin as she kind of comes into her own. She learns more about who she is. She learns more about these powers that she somehow has, and we learn so much just about this world. We get immersed into this political drama that is going on in their city and in the world around them. And as the series goes on, your point of view expands more and more to see more about what's going on in this world, who all of these different political bosses are, and how they are all kind of clicking together and like coming in conflict with one another, and how just like the magic system affects all of that. It is just such an incredible series. And I won't shut up about it. Like I said, I will not shut up about it. And reading Tress of the Emerald Sea and then getting like some breadcrumbs of like maybe some stuff that we learned in this, I'm like, I know this much about the Cosmere and I'm already like geeking out over it. I will be fangirling over Brandon Sanderson for probably many years to come. So you guys can look forward to all of that. Okay, last but certainly not least, this should not come as a surprise to anyone, especially since I kind of spoiled it in my Fable thing earlier, but my number one read of the year was The Women by Kristen Hanna. I've already talked about how much I love Kristen Hanna and the way that she writes, and all of those things still stand true. This book just hit so hard. For a lot of time after this, I was just thinking nonstop about the Vietnam War and about like the things that those who fought in the war, who were nurses in the war, who were alive during the war, like the things that they dealt with, I just could not stop thinking about. And I was like asking everybody that I knew that might have been alive during that time or experienced some sort of whatever with the war. Like I was asking them about their experiences. I was wanting to know like all the different perspectives that I could gain, because it just gave me such a different point of view, and it opened my eyes to this event in history that I had never really thought that deeply about before. And it also introduced me to a character who I came to know and love so much, to the point where I feel like she is my friend. Like I could call her up and be like, hey girl, how are you doing? Like, how's the, thing? Are you, whatever. Anyways, I just really love this book, and I just love how much of an impact Kristen Hanna can make through the characters and stories she writes. I mean, we follow so many years of this main character's life as she goes to Vietnam, she serves as a nurse, she comes home, she experiences all of the backlash, she experiences the political drama of the battle of like, oh my gosh, there's so many people who are anti-war and I was in the war, and all of these things she battles with. And then she battles with just the emotional trauma of having seen and experienced the things that she did. We follow her for so many years. We get to know her so deeply. And Kristen Hanna does all of that in about 500 pages. I'm sorry, what? This was hands down my favorite book of the year. So our top books were honestly such a fantastic stack, so I'm not mad about that. But I'm gonna shut up now. Honestly, that was a lot, but I'm so grateful for this year, for the ability to read the books that I got to read, to start to like refine my reading taste a little bit more. Obviously, my top books were fantasy and historical fiction, which is so bizarre for me. I did not, like, first of all, those two genres are so different. And then also, I didn't actually think, I was like, every time I go to pick up a historical fiction, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. Or like I go to pick up a fantasy, I'm like, it's gonna be a lot. But then I'm like, they end up being my favorite books. So I think I've really refined my taste a lot more over the last couple of years of reading, and I am very much looking forward to picking up some more books in these genres that I love, especially by authors that I've started to love. I think I have gone back to kind of my roots of reading, where like I used to find an author and read everything on that author's backlist. And then I would find another author and read everything on their backlist. Or I would like find a series and I would read the entire series start to finish, and I would not pick up anything else until that series was over. And I think I'm just kind of starting to go back to my roots in that way. Like picking up 4 Brandon Sanderson books in the span of like 6 months is absolutely wild. That is crazy work, but I feel like it made me love it so much more, and it made the experience just so much better because I didn't have a ton of time in between picking up his books. Like I got to experience them like back to back and really be immersed in his world. And then picking up Kristen Hanna, like I feel like she is just one of those authors that I have read probably 6 books of hers by now, and there's only been 1 or 2 of those books that I did not like. The rest have been like 5-star reads for me. So I think I'm just starting to like learn that I actually should go back to reading the way I used to read when I was a kid, which was like let myself be obsessed, let myself fangirl a little bit on a certain author or a certain series, and like be okay with just like reading a whole series back to back or reading every book on an author's backlist. Like not feeling like I need to jump around to all these different things just to like keep up with what's going on in the bookish world, but like actually being okay with just like reading within my taste and like reading with the intent of really enjoying books rather than just like reading to keep up with what everybody else is reading. So that is all for today's video. Have a great New Year's, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.